I've always had orgasms since I can remember. Since I was a little girl, I've always had orgasms. And I knew at a young age, don't do it in front of my mum. Because I have vivid images. I used to have like lots of orgasms every day, just through my self-stimulation, like on the bed or humping a pillow or something at night time, humping a pillow. And I have a vivid image of my mum like hanging out the washing on the washing line out in the backyard, and I can have it. Of course, that you don't call it an orgasm when you're a little kid. You just do it because it feels good. And then I have a distinct memory of when I was like 8 or 9, in the school I went to, which was a boys and girls school, the girls group I belonged to, we played horses. So we would like pretend we were horses, and wild horses in Australia, the wild horses there are called brumbies. And I used to have to turn myself on when I was self-pleasuring alone, it was never in a group or anything. I would always have an image of a stallion like rearing up. So Australians are brought up quite close to nature, like we camping at beaches and all that kind of thing. So I'm actually first generation Australian. My parents are Lutheran. So for them, that was the Lutheran thing. I didn't really know about that until they found out I was having sex when I was a teenager. So the Australian culture is, of course, completely different and foreign to a lot of immigrants, of course, came to Australia. And so my dad was at sea all of his life. He was captain of a ship. And my mum raised me and my 2 sisters. So she was in the Australian thing. My dad was not. And so when I think the age of consent in Australia is 15. I think it's 15. Well, I was almost 17 when I was having a regular sexual relationship. It was with a man 10 years older than me. It wasn't like he was a sophisticated dude or anything like that. And so, cut a long story short, when my parents found out I was having sex, honestly, I got expelled from school, I got taken to a gynecologist, the gynecologist who delivered me, and I had to go to a child psychologist that was part of the Department of Education system there, the school system. But the funny thing with that was, so me and my mum would go, he'd talk to my mum, and then I'd go in for me to talk to him, and he would just say, look, I have 3 teenage daughters, I don't see anything wrong with what you've been doing. And then he'd just sit there the rest of the session and we'd look at each other. So basically my mum ended up saying I couldn't live in the house because I had 2 younger sisters if I didn't live by their morals. So in that conversation, it was a particular afternoon after they found out, after my mum found out I wasn't staying the night with my girlfriends, I was somewhere else. So I decided I'd just come home and tell the truth. And so she said, yeah, can't live here unless you live by our morals. I said, well, what is that? You've never said anything. And she thought I was being a smart ass. And I went, no, I'm really asking this so I can agree, or like, no, if I'm going to live here. And it was the hardest, the hardest moment I think she ever had with me. And she said, well, no sex before marriage. And I said, thank you. I thanked her. And I said, okay, I got that. And I did move out a few months later, like after my school exams finished and all that jazz. But it was interesting because I knew, not just because of the psychologist told me I was okay, I knew it was okay. And I knew that my parents were just reacting like that because they'd never had any education. That was the way they'd been brought up, so it was just a total whoa. It was just that came up. And so basically, in Australia, a normal teenage thing is drinking and drugs and sex. And probably it wasn't until I was about, gosh, I went to university, did architecture, started taking drugs, left, moved to the country with my boyfriend, get off drugs, built a house, I had a beautiful baby. This is like all over a 10-year span, right? Had an awesome birth, home birth, with a great midwife and all that. And then there was a point where I realized my behaviors of drinking and drugs and partying and all that was no longer serving me after a little car accident on a New Year's Eve. I mean, honestly, I got off really light. I just had concussion. And so then I went to, on the land I was living on, 500-acre property, there was other people living there. A Swami used to come to the community house and teach a weekly yoga class. Well, I thought all that spiritual stuff was a bunch of bull. All my girlfriends, I was so pig-headed, they all went to it, right? And they just didn't even bother saying anything about it to me. They were so stubborn. And so anyway, that particular Jane went, you know what, I think I'll go check it out. So I go to this class. All my girlfriends have been going forever. I didn't know what a Swami was. He had like a shaved head and wore, it's called Geru, it's a soft orange color. And in this beginner's yoga class where there was postures and pranayama, breathing practices and relaxation, I had all these psychic experiences, like all these images of the drug taking stuff. It just blew me away. Like, it was psychic experience, just releasing the tension that was in my being from that very first class. I went, oh, well, this is pretty powerful. And so because I've been doing martial arts for a number of years, I used to do Kyokushinkai karate 3 times a week and went in tournaments. I knew, well, look, once a week isn't enough. If I really want to experience this, well, there was a beginner's yoga week at the local ashram coming up like 2 weeks later for 7 days. Now, I didn't know what an ashram was. I didn't know what a Swami was, except the guy that would come to give 2 classes so far. So I went, there was about 12 of us, my girlfriends from that land all went as well. And I swear, every night when I would go to sleep, I would go into this space where the walls would be like breathing in and out and Om chanting, like I was in this big hall just with the sound of Om going on. And I went, well, this is pretty powerful stuff. And so we'd get up at early, 5 or something, class was 5:30, we'd have different classes during the day. And then it turned out the master of the whole system, Swami Satyananda Saraswati, which is the Bihar School of Yoga, was doing his last trip around Australia. Well, guess what? He was coming to the little ashram there on the tour. And I had no idea who he was. All the Swamis, there's only 10 that live there anyway, permanently. They were all excited. And then he was going to give a talk up the coast. We say up the coast, it was like about 100 miles away before coming down to the ashram. And so for our group, for our little yoga beginners group, they got a little bus, and they were going to all go up for that talk, even though he was coming down there. And I said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go to my karate class. I don't want to miss it. But the last minute, I went, oh, okay, I'll go. And the talk he did was on Ida and Pingala, like on the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, and how every 90 minutes the breath and the predominance of the nervous system switches for every human being. And I went, oh, well, that's I never knew that. And anyway, it was like completely scientific and explaining, about the brain and the dormant areas of the brain, stuff like that. So I filled out a form to get a spiritual name and a mantra for when he was back down at the ashram. So he was down at the ashram for the next 2 days, and I mean, I kept having all these experiences. I don't even need to say anything else about them, but just experiences of pure white light force energy. So in the sexuality program I teach, and we would call it shulakwe, like pure white light, orgastic, ki, chi, life force energy in different ways during the classes. Now, he didn't teach any classes, but he gave a talk. And so the first night he gave a talk, and then he was going to do initiations. The next day I didn't know what that was. I was signed up to get a spiritual name. And then they said 10 a.m., yeah, all the people getting initiated, meet here. And honestly, I couldn't sleep. I just went, I got to get initiated. I don't know what it is. I don't actually care, but is this weird? Like, I was asking all the swamis, is this weird? I've just got this thing, I got to do it. So he gave 2 different types of initiation. In the middle of the night, I changed my paperwork. So Swami Satchidananda gave traditional initiation called sannyas in that particular lineage, which is where then for 12 years you just go train, you go live with the master, whoever's running the joint. And then there was karma sannyas, which is householder, disciple. So that was the initiation I had, because it means that you're out in the world, you got family, kids, whatever, you got whatever the work is you're doing. And that was February 22nd, 1984, and everything changed after that. So a year later, I went and moved into the ashram in that tradition in New Zealand. So I was given the name Swami Muktananda Saraswati. So Swami means master of oneself. They give you the degree at the beginning rather than at the end. And then Muktananda means the bliss of spiritual freedom. And Saraswati is the lineage, which is a very old lineage that dates back over time. It has the Saraswati lineage has a specific role in the evolution of consciousness. So each lineage has a specific role. And that's why different lineages wear different color robes, for instance. So the particular color we wore, geru, which is a very soft orange, it's not like bright orange, was to specifically spark memory in people who'd been connected to that lineage before. Because Satchidananda would just say, look, you've all been with me before. And so he just said, look, I'm like an older brother who's further along the path. But I had no hesitation, because I'd had all these intense experiences, like in 1 week, and I knew, yes, one needs guidance with these practices. So in the whole system, why it's so powerful is that it's scientific, systematic practices. So a year later, I moved into the ashram in New Zealand, lived there for 4 years. It was just phenomenal training. And the missing ingredients was sexuality. You see, that lineage and those teachers were not able to address sexuality, which is such like the most natural part of life. So that was definitely the downfall of its schools. It's still kind of going on, like all of the stuff that happened around that. But that's pretty common with a lot of spiritual leaders. They say, don't do what I do, do what I say. And across the board, they've been falling. And so when our ashram was closed in New Zealand, we had a fantastic director, still a very, very dear friend of mine, and who was very entrepreneurial. So we set up businesses, still kept teaching yoga. And then, so I ran Satyam Desktop Design, desktop publishing business, new technology and all that. And a young woman came into my business. Well, we actually had the businesses all in the same location, in that place in central Auckland. We had the best crystal shop in New Zealand, desktop design, and she wanted me to typeset this thing about dance your dream awake and some shamanic something or other. And I knew that even I couldn't understand a word, it was all jargon. That what she was writing about had something to do with what Lynn Andrews, who wrote Medicine Woman and a few other books that I started reading, she was doing stuff with some Native American women in Canada. Well, after reading the first chapter of her books, I would have some psychic experience in a night. After, I think I read just the first 3. So I knew, oh, Dancy Dream and Wait, when the woman come back to pick it up, the poster, I said, like, what is this? I don't understand a thing on it. I can't come to the week-long thing, but what else do you do? So she was running a sweat lodge that weekend. I went to the sweat, didn't know what the sweat was. You know, we were quite a close-knit little group of swamis. You know, we didn't socialize like regular people. We just taught yoga. And my friends waved me off from the house. We were sharing, oh, come back, because I was going to stay the night up there. It was a fair way out of Auckland. And I love to tell this story because in her house, which was next to the biggest statue of Buddha in the southern hemisphere, it was on Bodhisattva Road next to a Buddhist temple, Hester had this round table and had all these brochures for ceremonial medicine journeys in Guatemala and one in Mexico, and I saw them. This is before the sweat. I saw the price in US dollars, $2,500 US. I just said to myself, oh, I can't do that. I didn't even know what it was. I had like no idea. I said, oh, I can't do that. And then she explains what's going to happen in the sweat. And I mean, I didn't know anything about, I had like no idea, as nobody does before they go in the sweat. And she said, oh, well, the first round, each person in turn says their prayer out loud. And I went, oh my God, I got to like speak my prayer out loud. I mean, it's completely pitch black. I got to speak my prayer out loud. Oh, I see why I'm here. Kind of thing, right? Anyway, after the sweat, I read everything on that table. 5 months later, I went on one of those journeys. I had the same kind of experiences I did when I met Swami Satchidananda, like at the beginning of the journey. It was in Mexico for a month. And so I ended up becoming an apprentice of that medicine path, sweet medicine and Sundance path. But the thing I forgot to mention, so the young woman who led that ceremony, she had done some of the sexuality programs of that tradition, which is just part of the programs. And I could see, she's like completely connected to her body, and I hadn't been around like anyone that thought orgasms were okay, right? Even though I'd always had them and I still self-pleasured. And I went, oh yeah, she's pretty cool. So that was when I found out about the sexuality teachings that are within that medicine path. And after that, on that journey, I apprenticed to the path. Like you give a blanket to one of the teachers, but you're not making your commitment to them. It's to that body of knowledge. So it was really the first body of knowledge that had open teachings on sexuality, that sex is sacred, natural, and beautiful. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll come to America for a few months, get a few teachings, go back to New Zealand where I was based. And one thing led to another. I got sponsored for a green card by the organization, and now I'm a US citizen because I had it for so long. And I had no idea when I came here that I would become a Kwiatkowski teacher in that tradition. So there's about 12 of us that are trained on the planet, and that's just one of the programs that I teach in, but with the foundation of like the direct experience of prana shakti in the yogic tradition is absolutely my foundation, and the practices from that. Then to overlay into that space proper education about sex, sexuality, sexual energy, so forth and so on, is really all part of my path. But then in 1995, I trained through the International Professional Surrogates Association. They were based in LA. They're based in California, and I did their training. It's a 10-day training, and then I was an intern. So I am a certified surrogate partner. So that's the Western medical model, and it's very controversial, especially outside of California. Like most of the sex therapists who work with surrogates and most of the working surrogates are in California, because even though it's not written into law, it's understood that surrogate partner therapy is not what the law would call prostitution. Not that there's anything bad about prostitution, especially when it's in the light and not in the dark. So that's why I say here on Mama Chili, I do sex coaching. I don't want to be the test case in Arizona. And so I've worked with all different clients. Last week I did a beautiful Skype with a young man in Finland who I think he was 20, 21. He's a virgin. He has cerebral palsy. And he just wanted some like real information, So we actually did a whole thing on the anatomy types there, and just the structure of a woman, so that he could see. So it just takes so many different formats. So the last client I worked with here in Phoenix was a young man with cerebral palsy who was very heavily medicated with pharmaceuticals. Bless his therapist who reached out to me, and gosh, we just did the most simplest things. I would do a session maybe once a month, depending on my travel schedule, just for 1 hour, and it was just so he would have the confidence that he was okay, nothing was wrong with him. He just needed some skills like how to unhook a bra or how to create a clear boundary, his boundary with someone, because what I found, especially for younger men, the women of a similar age, they're all ready to jump into bed and have sex, but typically the young men are not. Contrary to popular mythology. Yeah. So, because where do they get the education? We're meant to know everything, right? Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. And because of the specific teachings on genital anatomy in the first level of the Kudoshka, spiritual sexuality, I've sort of taken that on as my thing, because it has makes such a profound difference for people just to have education about their genital anatomy. Doesn't matter like what type you are, but just to understand your anatomy and physiology, and include it like in the rest of the body, like it's not some place to be hidden. And it's such so I've been taking photographs of men and women of their pussy, and I use the word pussy and cock because that's the Australian words, I guess, of some Australians. And so I've been taking photos for a very long time, and now it's moved into the video, just like making the film. And so when I talked about the Pussy Talks as being the documentary, so Pussy Talks is like the big space of it. In the sweet medicine way, we talk about a morphogenetic resonance field, or a magnetic attracting thought space. So like everything is vibrating energy. So here's this space, the Pussy Talks, which is about, wow, look at all of the different pussies. Oh my God, I had no idea they were different. And then to hear women speaking in a way, that's the thing that's blown me away with doing the videos, because when women have come to have to be filmed, I just use my little iPhone 6 Plus. That's why I got it, specifically for the project. And, I'm like sitting there with a camera, and usually they ask, well, what questions do you want me to answer? And so you can say whatever you want. And I show a couple of examples, and they go, oh, yeah, really, I can say whatever I want. And then when they're finished saying whatever they wanted to, it's really clear when they've said what they want to say. Then the only question I ask is, what does your pussy have to say? And they've sort of emptied out everything else, and it's extraordinary. Like some are talking to the world, some are talking to women, some are talking to men. It's amazing. So that's what I'm up to. So my 55-minute version is called Feminine Beauty because I found it was easier for people who were renting public spaces not to say, oh, it's for the pussy talks. So it made it easier for renting places. The largest audience I've had is 40 in a venue in Melbourne. But at the end of the film showing, I hand out cards and people write on them what they're taking home with them, and so I have most of them. And I mean, there's the last comment I got. I'll have to read it to you. It just like sums up the whole thing. I can just like find it on here because the guy I had like a audience. Oh, the last screening I had was in Australia just before I left. Let's see. And TBD Amare. Just find his thing. And so, in a way, that's why I moved out, sold my house. I just want to focus now on this because this is like my mission. Some agreement. Whoop, not Amare. Oh, here we go. Okay, so when people were writing on their cards, he just kind of went like that, like a deer in the headlights. So then he wrote me this. Pussy talks, it made me speechless. The diversity and beauty that shines through in your work by simply showing it as it is, or as we are, is spellbinding. It has the power to bring a greater level of authenticity to my life. This is one of the most powerful and memorable pieces of documentary making I have seen. Thank you for your courage to bring this to the world. Amare Pearl. Isn't that incredible?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so like one woman wrote, oh, after 25 years of dead libido, I'm like, wow, that's what's happening in my body kind of thing, just from the way that the women were speaking. Okay, so many world religious leaders over a long period of time have said, when you control the sexuality of the people, you control the people. Now, I've heard it from a Buddhist teacher here in Phoenix, and I've heard it in a variety of different places. So when we look back at where we've come from, you know, there was a point in time where religion, whatever it was, became the driving, controlling force. I mean, all of it, like the whole history of religion is like pretty scary. And so really when you know, if people are being free with their free, you can't control them. That's the bottom line. And so now, I mean, you know, like the latest sex education until the Democrats came in again with Obama was abstinence, right? And people and parents are like all upset about their teenagers doing weird stuff that because it's not sexual intercourse, they think it's not a sexual thing. And so there's just so much ignorance perpetuated from the fear of one's own energy. So if we actually learn, and you know, one of the missing things too, so see with puberty rites of passage, because there are many traditions that do have it, and maybe a lot of it's been coloured and repressed because of religious impact. But there has been a time when young people in different cultures learnt before, during, and after puberty. They would learn what the heck was going on in their body when the sex hormones start raging on, and then actually have proper education about their own body, about how orgasms for health and well-being, so forth and so on. So there's a whole missing, really, in the history of the world that's gone through various stages of honoring honoring the human experience, the human being, and the source of all life. So that's why just the simplest education about, not just about like sexual diseases and all that, of course like sexual hygiene is part of it, but if you don't know anything about what sexual is or sex is, it doesn't make any sense at all. So there's fear is propagated about it. Yeah.
Talk about creativity and sexual energy.
Well, because that sexual energy is the catalyst. Like sexual energy is the driving force in every cell and atom in creation. It's the thing that has us get up in bed. So get out of bed in the morning. So, you know, procreation, like a lot of people say, oh yeah, all those people just say it's for procreation. Like procreation, that is the driving force of our creativity and our expression. And, you know, part of the benefits of having sexual education, which is an ongoing thing through your whole life, like none of us are ever at a point where, yep, got that handle, right? Never, not one of us. Then, oh, I forget, I just lost my train of thought about the procreation. Oh yeah, about honestly, I just lost it. Procreation.
Sexual energy, the reason we get up out of bed.
Oh, it's the reason. That's the reason why we get up in the bed. But the thing is, if we're rejecting any aspect of our sexuality, how we think about it or feel about it, like anything, or how we choose to express it, we're actually against our own self. We are against, like we've like slashing ourselves with a sword, you could say. And so with proper education then, so okay, we know there's sex for procreation, and actually honoring that force, that intensity, it is the fuel for our creativity, well, our business, like whatever format you're expressing yourself in the world. So yeah, what I was going to say, so when we actually free our life force, meaning free ourselves from all of the ways that we're against our own energy, then we're free to express what we actually came here to do on the planet.
Wow.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Talk about how your artwork, do you create these pieces?
Yeah, it's all my artwork, yeah.
That is brilliant. Talk to me about the imagery here.
Okay, well, you can see this symbol here of Sri Yantra, it's in the center there. I have it's in that symbol, it's there in that shield, it's there. So most of these are ceremonial shields. I've painted them for a specific ceremony. But that one I painted on my 60th birthday. I went to a mandala painting workshop, and when I first started going to the ashram on a regular basis, I went to a little weekend on yantra and mandala, and you had to hand draw a chakra or a yantra. So I actually hand drew this symbol, Sri Yantra, and we had to look at the dot in the center, like put it at eye level, and then I had this whole 3D experience. So Sri Yantra is considered to be a map of creation. It's representing everything in creation. And so when you do the steady viewing practice at the dot in the center, it actually reveals the structure of creation. So for you don't have to be looking at a yantra and staring at it. It has an uplifting influence wherever it is in the space. So then, like if you look at the one that's up on the wall behind, or I've got that one up there, I started to include in my images trying to show like the infinite space or the black hole of creation. So it's always representing like the masculine and feminine, and they're like the little seeds, you know, the sparks. And so I like to, in my artwork, express something always connected to the cosmic creation, you could say. And so this one here on the wall here, that's representing, with the two snakes, coming up here to the eyebrow center, it's representing Ida and Pingala. And so when the breath is perfectly even on the left and right side nostril, then Shushumna, the central channel inside the human body, flows, and you have this experience. And it's got the similar downward pointing triangle there is a symbol of the feminine. And then I've got the Mayan pyramid there. That's that part of a reflection of the shamanic tradition that I've been training in and still connected to. And the jaguars represent memory. So they're all, I've looked at how I've drawn the shields, because I usually do one of these once a year, and for the particular ceremony. And so I just start with a little pencil drawing, a little scribble, and then I start painting it, so it paints itself. Yeah, when you're doing something and it just
Creativity.
creates itself, yeah.
Do you sell your artwork? Do you create income with that?
Well, I used to paint a lot of shields for other people who are doing the same ceremony as me. And I do, I've tried advertising, like nothing serious, that I do paint this kind of thing for other people. It's like all of these are like representing my intent for the next 12 months. So they had a specific purpose. And I love painting those things. I do sell them. And then I sell all of these figures here. I sell canvas prints, but it's through various services. I have those websites where you put your art up, and then people can order whatever they want, a print, a jiggly print or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some of the results that people walk away from your training with?
I would say self-love, self-acceptance, just completely letting go of whatever they thought was wrong with them in the first place. And an excitement to, oh, wow, okay, I'm alive. I'm going to explore this. Wow, this sex thing, it's all right. And one of the programs I've done, Power and Contribution, the purpose of it was to come up with what one's promise is to the world. It's been like the underlying thing, since childhood. So my promise to the world is that by the year 2030, that all people are free to experience and express the pleasure and power of being alive. So I would say experiencing the pleasure and power of being alive is what people walk away with when they have an interaction.
Yeah. Give me a sentence that connects that, say, after when people come out of my coaching sessions, just so I can have a connector.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No matter what a person has come to for coaching around their sexuality, they always walk away with the experience of, no, blah, blah, blah. I'll start that again.
That actually works. Then you had all those acceptance, love, all those things.
Oh, okay. After people have had a coaching session or some kind of experience with me, whether it's in a group setting or individually, they always walk away with self-love, self-acceptance, and just really connecting to the pleasure and power of being alive.